Hey guys, how are you doing? It's been a while since I've done a movie review on this channel, so I thought I would because I watched a pretty cool movie last night that I want to tell you about. It's a Swiss horror film, a very, very rare Swiss horror film called SENNENTUNTSCHI. SENNENTUNTSCHI. Let me show you. Rented it. Look at this logo on this DVD here. Is that cool? That's really cool. Okay, so anyway, I watched this last night. And I've got mixed feelings about it. It was a quality film. It was very suspenseful and very creepy at times, but also a little bit hard to follow because there was so much going on in this movie. There were so many subplots. You know, it was kind of hard to tie everything together. And the centerpiece is like the myth of this woman who kind of appears out of nowhere in this village. This beautiful, beautiful Swiss Alpine village in 1975. The movie begins in present day, and then it flashes back for the majority of the movie to 1975 when all this stuff was going on. The very, very opening scene of the movie, there's this mother and child in this beautiful Alpine setting. You can see the huge, Swiss Alps in the background. And they're in the forest and they're picking mushrooms. And it's like very fairy tale-ish, very, very beautiful looking. One thing about this movie is it's very, very beautifully photographed. I mean, it's just stunning to look at. But anyway, so they're in the forest and they're picking mushrooms, and this little girl sees this like really, really fairy tale looking mushroom that's like red and it's got white dots on it, and she runs over and brings it to her mother and shows her, and she's like, no, that's poison. The prettiest mushrooms are usually dangerous. So we're looking for these ones. And she shows her like a normal brown mushroom and tells her to go back and look for some more. So she goes back in the forest and she finds a whole patch of these brown mushrooms, and then she sees like this flickering light on her face, and she looks up and there's this boy. Looks like maybe a 14 or 15-year-old boy. Looks kind of, how shall I put this? Slow. And he's like standing on this rock and he's laughing and he's shining this mirror at her, which is causing this light to flicker on her face. And he also reflects the light on the mushrooms, and she's like, oh, thank you. For, I guess, showing her where the mushrooms were. And then he disappears. And so she goes back, she's picking the mushrooms, and then she finds this, like, skeletal hand and screams. And then the cops show up and this investigation begins. And that's when the flashback to all these events in 1975 start occurring. Okay, so anyway, the basics are... Okay, when this movie flashes back to 1975, this village church, they find this monk or priest hanging from like the bell tower, and everybody thinks like there's something devilish going on and all this stuff, and that it's really murder, it wasn't suicide. And so the main cop in this town, I guess the only police officer in this town, this good-looking, hardy-looking guy, he's on the case. And then this mysterious woman shows up out of nowhere, and she's wrapped in this blanket. She's all muddy. She's all dirty. She's got long black hair, which is all matted. And she's mute. She doesn't say a word, and she looks like really freaked out and all this. And so this police constable instantly like kind of forges this connection with her. Like he's kind of like, in one way, he's kind of like a father figure, and then they have this like sex thing going on because he brings her to the little office, police office in this town, and lies her on a desk, and then she reaches up and tries to kiss him, and, right away, they have this, like, instant kind of sex bond going on between them. But, then the doctor shows up and interrupts it and everything. So basically, he's kind of like, this cop is kind of like her caretaker. He sees himself as her caretaker. And so anyway, the whole movie, she's kind of like wandering, like, in the village, going up this mountain where there's this, like, big cabin, and this really, like, misogynistic asshole guy lives there, this older guy with his son, who is the kid we saw in flashback at the beginning of the movie, who was on the rock shining the light on the mushrooms for the little girl. It's the same guy. His name's Albert. What was the name of the older guy? I can't remember. Irwin or Albert or something. Irwin, I think his name was, and Albert was the boy. And so they live in this cabin, like in the mountains, and they hunt, and they're kind of like removed from the village. And this girl, like, she kind of goes back and forth in between the village and the mountain all the time. And SENNENTUNTSCHI is like this myth or this legend about how these guys who lived like on their own in the mountains or on these farms and everything and didn't have women around, they would make their own women out of this broom. They'd fashion a woman out of a broom and I guess make fake tits and, you know, whatever, make it look like a woman. And then they do some kind of ritual to kind of make her come to life and actually be a woman. I guess they'd pray to Satan or whatever. And then they could have their way with her and have all kinds of sex with her, and she'd do the housework and stuff like that. But then, later on she would turn on them and, you know, skin them alive or some kind of shit or whatever. And so that's like kind of the legend that's going on. And, you know, I'm not really doing a good job, I realize, describing this movie to you, because I'm just kind of describing random elements in the plot here. Like I said, it was kind of hard to follow. Like, in one instance, everybody in this village, except for this cop, is, like, really, really against this woman. Like, when she shows up, they automatically think that she's the one responsible for the monk's death. And then this woman who's pregnant, she ends up losing her baby. They blame the woman for that. And this guy is her only defender. Like, he's keeping her safe in his house. When he goes away, he brings her to, like, you know, the mayor. And, you know, says, can you watch her for me? But then something happens, and she takes off. She ends up going up this mountain to this cabin where these rough guys are living. And then they end up, like, having their way with her and having all kinds of sex with her. And, so anyway, let's forget about the plot for the time being. The atmosphere of this movie was very, very good. The look of this movie was very, very good. Acting was fine. You know, definitely not a schlock movie, not a, you know, crappy, you know, like horror movie. You're not going to find that in European films anyway. It's not like, you know, these American companies that churn out these, you know, hack horror films every month and stuff like that. These are like quality films that actual thought has gone into. There was definitely a lot of thought put into this movie, and I really liked the myth element of the SENNENTUNTSCHI thing. But I kept waiting for something to happen. Like, you know, she's in this cabin, she's looking all dazed, you know. One minute the guy's, you know, showing her how to make coffee, and then he's nailing her up against the wall, you know. And then this other guy earlier in the movie had showed up at this cabin who had murdered his girlfriend. We don't know this at the beginning, but it turns he confesses that he murdered his girlfriend. That's why he's up there at this cabin. He's hiding out there, basically. And he ends up, you know, like, you know, having sex with her too, but then he gets all remorseful and he tries to help her escape, and it's really complicated, a lot of stuff going on, kind of hard to follow, but I think basically the atmosphere kind of made up for it, like the look of the movie, and, you know, like just the setting is just absolutely spectacular. I mean, just watching this movie for the setting alone, I probably would have sat there and watched it because it was so beautiful in this, like, Swiss Alp area. It was just stunningly, stunningly gorgeous, beautiful. And this girl was really creepy, you know? Like, actually, she kept reminding me, I was, like, watching, I'm thinking, who does this broad remind me of? And I don't know if you guys have seen the Hellraiser movies, but Ashley Lawrence was the girl who was in Hellraiser, and she looked just like her, only a little bit skinnier. I kept thinking, I was wondering if that was her, but I was like, no, it's probably not her. But she looked a lot like her, and she kept reminding me of her. I kept thinking of it through the whole movie. And, but anyway, there's, like, a lot of creepy moments. There's a lot of, like, you know, kind of tension going on as you're trying to figure out what's going to happen. And it's just an interesting film. So if you like European horror films, if you like quality horror films, if you like European movies, I would recommend this. It's definitely worth a watch. Out of 10, I would probably give this, I would say about a 6 or 7. 7. Let's make it 7. Yeah. Yeah, it was good. It kept me watching. You know, even though it was a little bit long, it seemed to drag on a little bit because there was so much going on. Her running back and forth from the village to the mountains, village to the mountains, village to the mountains. She keeps escaping and coming back and escaping and coming back, and it was a little bit frustrating. You know, like trying to, okay, like what's going on here? But yeah, like overall, you know, that whole Senentuntschi myth thing was really, really cool. And yeah, I enjoyed it overall. So if you guys would like to check it out, I recommend it. Hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you again soon. Okay, bye.